Here's a little twist on our usual type of story. In this case, finding the treasure was the first thing that happened. But then nobody believed it was real. No one, that is, except Ralph and Ian. Ralph Cook Jr. and Ian McCarthy are best friends who both live and work on the island of Nantucket off Cape Cod. Ian had recently discovered he had a distant relative who was one of the survivors of the most famous shipwreck of the 20th century. It had captured his imagination, along with that of historians, writers, movie makers, and now undersea explorers who located the ship in its watery grave.
And I became very obsessed with the Titanic and began reading books and talking to everyone about the ironies in the film.
And when he heard a local antique dealer had a deck chair that was supposedly from the Titanic, well, Ian decided he just had to have it. The chair looked authentic enough. It was made of Burmese teak and had the distinctive 5-point star insignia of the White Star Line carved into the headrest. And it came with a letter from the previous owner, describing how the chair had been pulled out of the water by someone on one of the rescue ships.
The original game plan was to buy the chair, see if we could establish it as being from the Titanic, and sell it.
It seemed like if anybody's going to, do this and maybe do well at it, Ian and I could.
They bought the chair for $3,800.
We didn't know what to do with it when we first got it. Is it something you should keep in a safe, or is it something you keep in your house? And so we would keep it in my closet, in my living room.
The next day we went and called Sotheby's, and they stressed upon us the importance of provenance, provenance, provenance.
The provenance establishes an object's authenticity by documenting its history in writing, with verifiable facts. Museums, collectors, and auction galleries will not buy or sell an artifact like the deck chair without an acceptable provenance. Ian and Ralph knew they would have to do much better than the letter.
If you have the documentation, it could be worth a lot of money, maybe more than $100,000. And once we heard the news that it could be in that ballpark, we decided we had to go to Halifax and try to build a case. We flew from Nantucket to the Cape, rented a car, and drove 13 hours to Halifax.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. This was the port closest to where the Titanic sank, from where rescue ships set sail to pick up the hundreds of bodies that were reported floating in the sea. The White Star Line chartered 2 cable ships for the job. The first to depart was the Mackie Bennett, equipped with undertakers, coffins, and embalming fluid. According to the letter which came with the chair, it was on one of these ships that Jean Le Mateleur, the captain of a French cable repair ship, fished the chair from the cold waters of the Atlantic. Ian and Ralph's first stop was the Maritime Museum in Halifax.
We went right to the chair that they had because they have a Titanic deck chair. So, matter of fact, the sign says they have the only Titanic deck chair in the world.
And our first reaction was, wow, it's the same as our chair.
There's the White Star mark.
But upon looking at it closer, we realized that there were some subtle differences. For example, the seat is a cane seat in their chair, and ours has wooden slats. And we noticed the way the footrest connected together, and instantly we had this sinking feeling in our stomach that what if all the chairs in the Titanic were made this way? Then it would kind of rule out our chair. So we regrouped, we went up to the library, and we found a picture of the chairs on the Titanic stacked up. We had a magnifying glass, and we were able to show very clearly that there were many different varieties of deck chairs visible in this photograph, and that was our first hurdle that we overcame.
We asked them about the captain, and they said, listen, that captain that you're talking about has never been in Halifax during the time of the Titanic sinking. Well, that was a sinking blow to our whole account. If the man wasn't even in Halifax, how could he have collected this chair from the Titanic?
We were going to find out if that was true or not, so we went to the Public Archives building to see if they had a city directory. And very quickly we were able to find that the captain was listed here from 1906 onwards. And then, I think Ralph was the one that pointed out to me, there's a sign over their chair that says, this is the only chair in the world from the Titanic. And we started talking amongst ourselves, like, maybe they don't want there to be a second chair. So we decided that we would try to find Captain Le Mateleure's will, because we figured that person might be around who would have pieces to the puzzle. So we went to the Registry of Wills here in Halifax.
And in his will, he had left everything to a Margaret Bullcoats.
But as hard as they tried, they couldn't find any Margaret Buchholz.
We tried all directories and all kinds of fancy footwork to find her, and we couldn't find her.
Having reached a dead end, they were leaving town when they realized what they did have was Captain Lamatelure's last address.
Not far from here at Cemetery.
We went to the street where the captain had lived, and we said if we could find an older person that might remember him, maybe we could get information.
So we began knocking on doors on the street. Everyone pretty much said they didn't know him, but we found one old woman who said, "Oh, the captain was a dear neighbor of mine. Please come in." She had an employee named Margaret, who was a housekeeper, and when the captain's sister died, he was all alone. She sent Margaret over to take care of the captain.
And we said, was that woman named Margaret Buchholz? And she said to us, well, Margaret Buchholz was her maiden name, but she's married now, and her name's Margaret Pennington.
Ian and Ralph were so excited, they drove immediately to the small town outside Halifax, where Margaret Pennington was living.
And I took out a picture of the chair. She goes, "I know that chair, I know that chair. That chair was from the Titanic."
The captain used to keep the chair in the garage. And I said to him, "Captain, why don't you take the chair and put it in the garbage? It's no good to us." He's always said, "Oh, no, that's from the Titanic. I gotta hold on to it. It's very sentimental, you know, I retrieved it."
And Ralph and I just looked at each other and we were like, home run.
Now Ralph and Ian had independent verification of the letter. The trip to Halifax had paid off.
So we were going home completely joyous and happy, and when we got to Nantucket, we went straight to the Nantucket newspaper and we said, "Boy, have we got a story for you."
We're opening the paper thinking, this is it. They're going to say, you know, we have found an amazing discovery. But instead, they said the alleged chair from the Titanic. And we asked them, why didn't you say it's the chair?
And their answer kept coming back saying, well, if they cannot establish the captain on a ship in the ocean in 1912, they really still can't prove that that chair was from the Titanic.
So we're like, okay, we're going to find it, you know?
So we went to Halifax for a second time. This time we flew. And when we got to Halifax, we went to the archives and we were told that the newspapers kept a merchant marine log which recorded the movements of all the ships in and out of the harbor.
And we tried to find out if they knew anything about, you know, his ship, the Contra-Admiral Cabet, which was the ship in Lloyd's Register that he was the captain of.
We began looking for the correct dates. We started in early in 1912 and went every day through the entire year. And to our extreme dismay, we found that the captain's ship, the Contra-Admiral Cabet, was listed as being in Halifax Harbor every single day of 1912. So we were saying to ourselves, how could he possibly recover a chair if his ship never left the harbor? The records for the French cable company, which employed Captain Lamatelure, were returned to Paris at World War II.
Ian and Ralph steadfastly believed Captain Lamatelure had pulled the chair from the water. They needed to prove his ship was out there, and now their only hope was the ship's log. And that was in Paris, in the archive of the French cable company that owned the ship. But they hadn't come this far in order to turn back.
So we decided to go to Paris. At this point, we were starting to feel a little bit of pressure from our wives about the money and the time we were putting into this.
Our wives this time are going with us because they're not about to stay home anymore for trips that we're going to go on.
So I packed up my wife and my 6-month-old son and Ralph and his pregnant wife, and we flew to Paris on a Friday evening.
They planned on giving themselves 4 days to do the research, but when they arrived at the archive, they discovered not only was it closed on the weekend, but that Monday was a holiday. That gave them a single day, Tuesday, to find the evidence they needed. Returning to the archive on Tuesday morning, Ian and Ralph are hit with yet another roadblock.
Upon getting there, we were told that we could not go in because we did not have credentials.
But someone overheard and offered to help, a professional researcher, who then escorted them inside and even helped with the research. With their new French friend, Daniel Coton, they went right to work.
I didn't read French, but I could follow the dates. And I noticed that under the word navire, which is boat, it kept saying the name Mackie Bennett, Mackie Bennett, Mackie Bennett.
What we learned is that because their ship is broken down, so the company had to rent a foreign ship. And And that was a big clue to us.
So the Mackie Bennett was actually working for the French cable company. But where did that put Captain Le Matelure?
Well, we got very excited because we knew that Mackie Bennett was the best ship that we could have found out he was linked to. So we said, how can we find the cable repair documents that these things are referring to? They said, well, they're in another archive in Paris.
They only had a few hours left, and the new archive was on the other side of town.
So we go to this place. They say, what do you want? We tell them what we want, what record we're looking for.
And he said, well, it's 4 o'clock and we're going to be closing pretty soon.
Now time is of the essence because our plane's leaving.
We opened them up and we couldn't help but think, nobody has touched these books in 86 years. We start flipping through the pages and we happen upon the log, which is called Particulars of Repair, that is written in English by the British commander of the Mackie Bennett.
And right on the top line it says Captain Julien Le Matelure on board the Mackie Bennett. And that was it. That put our captain in the ship during the time of the Titanic sinking.
I think we jumped up in the middle of a no-talking archive and did a high five and maybe a shriek.
Now they had proven beyond any doubt the chair was genuine, documenting its journey each step of the way, from being plucked out of the North Atlantic by a French ship captain, all the way to an antique shop in Nantucket.
By the time we came back from Paris, between all of our traveling, long-distance telephone calls and everything, we were probably into the whole thing for about $20,000.
I mean, we're not wealthy people, Ian and I, so if it was something that was going to come out of it, you know, that was good, I mean, that would be very good for us.
Everyone around us was saying, oh, you're going to make a fortune now, the chair's worth a fortune.
Well, maybe not a fortune, but it did turn out to be worth more than anyone thought. While Ralph and Ian look for a buyer, they are leasing the chair to the RMS Titanic exhibit in Orlando, Florida, where it's on display in its very own room. Appraised for $500,000, the chair has already returned more than their investment.
The idea of finding a chair and maybe it's valuable, well, nothing wrong with that. So my idea was, well, we lose, we lose. We win, we win. You know, we just try it.
On the edge of the Badlands in eastern Montana, the secrets are as big as the sky. These secrets are 75 million years old, and they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dutchman Rene Vandervelde is a treasure hunter, and he's looking for these secrets.
We're near Badger Creek, east of Browning right now, in what is called the Two Medicine Formation. That's the geological formation that we're looking at. And our quarry is right down at the bottom of this hill. There could be more than one skeleton, we are not entirely sure. We found bone over there. There's more bone around the corner to the right here. So there's quite a bit of material found here.
These relics are all that remain of the dinosaurs that once called this land home.
My dad's a treasure hunter. It started in about 1966. We moved to Western Canada, and I don't quite remember. We made a trip out to Drumheller, Alberta.
Just that year, the town of Drumheller had put out a booklet that says, "Come to the valley where the dinosaur roamed."
And my dad was immediately hooked on the whole dinosaur thing. I don't know if it was the romance of it, but he took us out just about every weekend to go fossil hunting. We was looking for the new fossil site. We traveled and spent all our summers digging for fossils.
I found the first skeleton in '67. And here was the tail section of the animal laying on one vertebra behind the other. It looked as if the animal was trying to climb back out of the earth. Now, after that happens to you, you're touched, and after that I couldn't leave it alone anymore, of course.
He's always been like that. He's always leading the expedition in, yeah.
Those expeditions, spanning 30 years, led Rene to quit his job managing hotels and to form a dinosaur hunting company called Canada Fossils Limited.
Right now we're going to look around a little bit and we are going to identify, if we can, the bones that we have dug out so far. This is a new quarry. We want to establish what kind of species we have. If we can identify it by species, it would be nice, but we probably haven't got enough material yet. And we want to also see whether we should dig towards the left, towards the right, deeper in, or where we are bound to find more of the skeleton.
Rene and his crew have located a rich site deep on the Blackfoot Reservation, a remote spot once home to thousands of dinosaurs, a spot that is now the final resting place for some of the once great animals.
Yeah, the first time that you find a skeleton, the first skeleton in particular, you think, wow, this is something that is never going to happen to me again in my whole life. Then you find the second and the third maybe, if you're lucky. But that feeling that you get from the rush that you get from finding that first skeleton, it's like somebody in the Olympics jumping higher than everybody else and getting a gold medal. It's that kind of feeling, I'm sure.
Is that a tibia, Dave?
It isn't long before paleontologist Dave Trexler uncovers the first hint of what lays below.
Distal end of the tibia here. We have distal end of a humerus here. This was a duck-billed dinosaur. The size of the bones indicate that it was about between 10 and 14 feet long.
Quickly, the Montana hillside begins to reveal its prehistoric treasures.
Yeah, Dorothy's got something there. What have you got, Dorothy?
Probably a partial rib.
Yet often the pieces are small. Sometimes thousands of pieces are needed to assemble a single skeleton. Some of these creatures stood over 40 feet tall, with jaws big enough to swallow a human whole.
Okay. We dig fossils and sell them, but we do it in order to make a profit, and we also do it because there is a demand. Museums don't all have the opportunity to come to Alberta or to Montana to dig for dinosaurs, and they have a need of certain fossils for their research or for their displays. And we fill that need.
Canada Fossils Limited has skeletons in some of the finest museum collections in the world. One of the institutions they work closely with is Alberta's Royal Tyrrell Museum.
Rene Vandervelde is somebody I was very familiar with right from the time I started working in Alberta about 20 years ago. He's not only got good information on individual animals, but good information on populations of animals. And this helps us not only in terms of finding fine specimens, but good information on those specimens.
Of the 30,000 dinosaur species thought to have existed, only 792 have ever been found. And Canada Fossils Limited has discovered more than a few of them.
Specimens like this, they're very hard to evaluate because in many cases they're irreplaceable, and so for us it has to be based largely on the amount of manpower that's put into preparing a specimen like this and collecting it. So something like this would probably be $50,000 to $75,000 worth, easy.
A rare and expensive treasure indeed. Once standing, these skeletons take on an eerie presence and an incredible value.
An adult duckbill like this one is $345,000. One of the fossils that we find are ammonites that we find in southern Alberta. They come out like this. They're always encased in rock, and we have to clean them up, work the ammonite out of the rock, and then we polish them and we lacquer them, and you get the end result like this. And they have sold for as much as $30,000 and $35,000 in Tokyo.
Monetary value aside, it's the sheer beauty and the hunt for these amazing treasures that keep Rene Vandervelde and Dave Trexler fascinated with their work.
It's a treasure hunt like the treasure hunt that the scientists do learning about the Mayans or the Egyptians. It's a part of our history that we know very, very little about, and the only clues that we have to that history or what you see buried here in the ground. These badlands probably were eroded out no more than 10,000 years ago, and 5,000 years from now they'll mostly be gone. So being exactly at the right place at the right time and being able to see something like this, I think, is just really neat.
As another dig day comes to an end, Rene and his crew climb in their trucks for an hour's ride back to the paved road. And tonight, the dinosaurs will sleep in the Badlands, waiting just a little bit longer to see the light of day.
Every one of us wonders about where we've come from, but how many of us really know? Who can trace our ancestry back more than just a few generations? Here in the brushy mountains of North Carolina, many families know they go all the way back to colonial America. But what about the rest of us? Well, a TV documentary producer in Great Britain has stumbled onto something that may be a giant leap forward in helping us find out.
Philip Priestley, a British documentary filmmaker, was assigned to do a film about regional archaeological sites near Cheddar, England. Yes, the same cheddar as in the cheese.
Cheddar's a fantastic place. Very interesting archaeology. And I'd known it for 50 years nearly, because I've lived here nearly all my life.
A show about archaeology around Cheddar made a lot of sense because one of England's most important finds was made right here in Cheddar Gorge. In 1903, while excavating one of the gorge's many caves, workers discovered the oldest prehistoric skeleton ever found in Britain. Cheddar Man, as he's fondly called, is almost 10,000 years old. And although the gorge and cave are now a tourist attraction, at the end of the last ice age, this was an ideal living situation for prehistoric man.
It would have been a wonderful place for hunter-gatherers to live. Everything was here that they needed: water, animals, and even a few plants and animals during the Ice Age. So it would have always attracted people, and especially the caves, which offered shelter. You could put a fire to the front and keep people out, keep other animals out, and you could keep warm inside the caves. So a change of environment, new opportunities, and new ways of living, and that's what we see with Cheddar Man.
Personally, Priestley found archaeology phenomenally interesting. But as an experienced television producer, he knew he had a serious problem. On TV, archaeology can be very boring. The digging is slow and tedious, the science complex and hard to explain. Priestley wondered how he was going to make this program watchable.
There's a boredom factor in archaeology that you have to get over. So we could use the scenery, we could use the cave, it all looks spectacular, but I was looking for something else, something that would draw the viewer in to the story and maybe give us a little bit of tension. And I said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did some DNA testing of the skeleton, and then if we test some people in Cheddar and see if there's anybody related to him?
Some fun detective work and a good dramatic device to keep the show interesting. So Priestley asked London's Natural History Museum, where Cheddar Man's remains are kept, to try and take a DNA sample from the 10,000-year-old skeleton. If they got a result, he'd then test a representative number of local high school students for their DNA.
The budget for a regional television program is quite small. It's very tight, so you have to be very careful how you spend it and how many days shooting you can do and how much editing. So to spend £2,000, it sounds very, very small, but in that budget it was quite big.
But if it would create some suspense for his show, Priestley felt it would be worth it. A DNA test had previously been attempted on Cheddar Man and failed, but a new test had come into use, one which held much more promise. The museum sent Cheddar Man's jawbone to the Molecular Science Institute in Oxford. From one of the tooth cavities in the jaw, scientists attempted to extract a special type of DNA known as mitochondria. In the human body, the mitochondria is inherited unchanged, generation to generation, but only down the maternal line from woman to woman. It is the DNA most likely to stand the test of time, and could still exist in the ancient bones. Much to Philip Priestley's relief, the scientists succeeded in finding a usable sample. Now Priestley turned to the faculty of Cheddar's local high school and sought their cooperation.
I spoke to the bursar And I put the problem to him. I said, I want some people to be in this program, to have the DNA taken, which is, it's not an they don't have to drill their teeth, they just take a little scrubbing from the inside of their cheek. And the bursar said, well, you better talk to the head of history here.
And so I was approached by Philip to try and DNA some students who came from the local area. So I simply asked them a question along the lines of how many of you have had grandparents living in this area, and if they could go back 2 or 3 generations. I asked them if they'd like to have their DNA tested.
The students agreed. The day arrived, and with film crew present, Priestley documented the event.
And some of the students were perhaps a bit apprehensive of what the DNA test was going to consist of. Some thought it might be a skin sample, and some thought it might be a blood sample, and I said, oh, it's only going to be a mouth swab. It's really easy, and I'll have mine done just to show you there's nothing involved.
The scientists took their samples back to Oxford and began to cross-reference the results.
Looking down here, yes,
Look at the one.
there
yeah.
are 292.
Only one.
Only one out of the whole lot. On the basis of what we've got here, that would be an identical match, which would mean that they had a common maternal ancestor. So who do we match this up with? Let's see.
Number 12.
Number 12. So who's number 12?
Number 12 was a match. Someone at the school was a direct descendant of Cheddar Man. Philip Priestley, while trying to dramatize his archaeology documentary, had made an extraordinary scientific discovery.
As I drove home, I actually stopped and rang a few people and said, well, we've got a result, we've got a result. And it only dawned on me after a little while that maybe this was an historic kind of finding.
So Priestley called Brian Sykes, the molecular biologist who had conducted the test, and asked him.
I said, is this the oldest, the longest DNA bridge that's ever been made between an ancient person and a modern person? He said, yes, it is. So I said, it's a world record. He said, yes, it is.
An incredible discovery. Philip Priestley had bridged the gap across 400 generations. He had the ultimate payoff for his documentary. Now, all he had to do was reveal to the world who the matching subject was. So he called a press conference at the school and had his documentary's host, archaeologist Mick Aston, make the announcement.
You're all agog, no doubt, to know who it is, who's related to the caveman found in Cheddar. Yes? What would you feel like if it was one of you? Because it's probably going to be of interest to people all over the world that there is a link over 9,000 years to this person found in the cave. Think you could stand the publicity and the visits to California and wherever? Yes? So, who is it? It's Adrian Target.
Thank you very much.
This is the man that's closest related to Cheddar Man.
I'm overwhelmed.
How do you feel about that, Adrian?
A bit surprised. I was just about to say, I hope it's not me.
This is the first time anyone had been able to establish a direct link between ourselves and our prehistoric ancestors.
Adrian, what was your instant reaction when you were told that you had this amazing line back 9,000 years to a caveman?
Well, it was a great shock, but then I realised that that was why I'd been put in next to the person who was doing the filming.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. And I went down the next morning to buy the newspapers, and there it was, all over the newspapers. This is the Sun newspaper. There's the Times. Here, big feature. That's front page picture. That's the Guardian, a terrific piece. That's the Daily Star. Here's another example. And this is a Swiss publication. Everybody found something of interest in this story. So here's Adrian. He's never been in the papers before, and suddenly there's his head, Cheddar Man, and Juliette Binoche in her swimming costume. So there's fame for you.
It struck me very unusual that you would actually have People living in the same place, ancestors over 9,000 years. Coming from an American background, where my family moved every 3 or 4 years to new state, new city, no continuity, and I didn't marry the girl next door, which might have been the case for Cheddar Man. It was just an experience which I couldn't relate to, and I still can't relate to, staying in one place, and then generations after generations after generation, 400 generations in this case. It's just mind-blowing.
There's some deep fascination with where we've come from and who we are, and these links between the past and the present. I suppose the fact that Adrian was the history teacher in the local school just made that was a bonus. You couldn't write that into a script. People would say, well, that's ridiculous. The history teacher turns out to be a descendant of this ancient man.
But Target was a lot less impressed than pretty much everyone around him.
I have to confess, although I know he's a relative, if you like, it's a very long-lost relative from a very long time ago. So I'm intrigued by it, but I don't regard him with perhaps the same affection as I might someone who was a lot closer to my family.
Although he takes it all in stride, Adrian Target has wound up with a very special treasure, the longest known human lineage, snaking back almost 10,000 years. And as important as this discovery is to Target and the scientific community, the greatest satisfaction goes to the man who stumbled upon it.
That was terrific. It was a joy. We'd done this work, we'd taken that risk, we'd spent our little bit of money, and there we were, and we'd hit the jackpot. Bingo.
All of us want to know where we come from. Maybe it's the desire to belong, or just plain curiosity that compels us to look to the past for the answer. Now, thanks to a documentary filmmaker and a teacher of history, we've moved one step closer to knowing.
Everyone has their own idea of what treasure is. Pirate ships, ancient relics, buried riches. But for some, it's vintage warplanes. These rare airplanes can often be worth their weight in gold. P-51 Mustangs, P-38 Lightning Bolts, flying boxcars, B-29 bombers, the great aircraft that fought the battles of World War II. But of all these warbirds, there is one plane that has been missing from the world's collection, one of the most notorious of all World War II fighters, the Japanese Zero. One man who searches the globe looking for vintage airplanes to resurrect from near extinction is ex-military pilot Alan Preston.
There's such a wonderful historic significance to the airplanes, and they are so charismatic in their own right. I grew up being in love with these airplanes, and as I got to the point where I was able to fly them or collect them, it became apparent to me that there were certain holes in the collection which would never be filled unless you were going to go and give birth to it. And that process meant locating the wreckage of an airplane somewhere, regardless of how remote that location was, going to whatever lengths necessary to reestablish it as a valid flying machine.
Alan Preston would set out on a 5-year quest to find and restore an extremely rare Japanese Zero fighter, a journey that would lead him through 50 years of history.
We considered it the rarest of the significant fighters, very significant to Americans because it played such a big part in our involvement in the war, starting with, of course, the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Out of the misty Pacific skies, like tiny locusts, they swarmed in from the sea. At 7:55 a.m., hell broke loose. Man-made hell, made in Japan.
On the morning of December 7th, 1941, the Mitsubishi Zero came as a distinct surprise to American military intelligence with its appearance in the skies over Pearl Harbor. Prior to that time, the intelligence community apparently did not divine the fact that the Japanese had created what today would be called a world-class fighter.
There are a number of aircraft which simply ceased to exist after the Second World War. The Zero was one of them. There were precious few examples of it left anywhere because most of the war materials were ordered destroyed at the end of that conflict.
Of the 10,500 Zeros built, many were destroyed in combat. Dozens more were fitted with bombs and used for the infamous kamikaze attacks on American ships near the end of the war. A last gasp tactic by a nation staring at defeat. At the war's end, General MacArthur ordered Japan to destroy her war machines and the plans to build them. That order sealed the fate of the Zero, and over 50 years later would send Alan Preston on a worldwide search to find a 100% original Japanese Zero.
There were a lot of wrecks out there, but this search was for one that would lend itself to restoration.
Extensive efforts have been made at restoring a Zero, like this one, constructed from bits and pieces of many other Zeros and fitted with an American engine. Although not entirely original and not up to Alan's standard for perfection, it embodies the spirit of a fine airplane with a storied history and fighting lineage.
This particular airplane is thought to have actually attacked Pearl Harbor. The Japanese national insignia, which is called the Hinamaru, is in the shape of the rising sun, also blood red in color, which the Allied pilots liked because it made a good target reference for them when firing at the airplane. These would be victory or kill markings against American or Allied aircraft. The outlined one is for a probable kill, not a confirmed kill.
If I had to go one-on-one, one aircraft on another in a classic dogfight, I would really rather be in the Zero. That's its forte. It was designed to be so maneuverable it would never get in front of an enemy's guns.
At the beginning of the war, it was the pinnacle of achievement of propeller-driven fighters. The Zero was a tremendously agile airplane, surprisingly long range, in its day, the best.
After years of searching the islands of the South Pacific, Alan finally located the Zero that fit his strict criteria on the island of Biak, Indonesia. Though only a rusted hulk, 70% of it was there and worthy of restoration. His battle had really just begun.
There are all sorts of government and local clearances necessary. And then you have the mechanical process of recovering the airplane without the advantage of modern tools. So it was like winding your watch back 1 century. You know, there were literally people trekking parts through a jungle on homemade dollies.
There was a lack of lumber in the area. The natives build their houses out of branches, twigs, vines. Natives were paid to disassemble some of their houses and erect a crate around the Zero, and it was shipped that way, arriving in Santa Monica, still in this very strange, almost folk art crate.
In the spring of 1991, the Zero had finally made its way back to Santa Monica, California, and was laid out in rusted pieces in a hangar they would use as their workshop.
Oh, it was like Christmas. And it was wonderful because, you know, the airplane was so exciting to us, not just in terms of having finally gotten it here so that we could begin the process of deciding what we were going to do with it, but really getting your hands on it for the first time. You know, as corroded and torn up as the cockpit was, you know, it was like unwrapping a series of presents. I mean, it was very exciting for all of us. It was a very light machine made of very light alloys, and it didn't stand up very well. It was never designed, it was never intended to stand up for that period of time. But it still looked like a Zero, and it was the best we were going to get.
Recreating these aircraft, whether Allied or foe, as memorials or remembrances of a time past, the American opposition was the Grumman Wildcat and the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. Now, both of those fighters fought through the war with distinction, but had limitations in engaging the Japanese airplane.
This is the Japanese Zero. Take a good look at her. Your recognition of the Zero may save your life.
Sir, how soon do I get a chance to knock one up and down?
Soon enough. Don't get any idea the Zero is a pushover. With 340 miles an hour top speed, a service ceiling of 35,500 feet, and a normal range of 700 miles, increased by a droppable extra fuel tank, there's not much you can't do.
A lot of young American aviators died trying to turn and fight with the airplane.
Now, the Americans learned very quickly, and they developed their own tactics, which would be to gain superior altitude on the enemy, dive on the enemy using your speed, make a firing pass, dive again, pull up, and try to repeat that, but not engage with the dogfight because they wouldn't win. They were not maneuverable enough.
As the team researched the history of this formidable flying machine, they discovered it had a storied fighting history during the war. It flew with an outfit called the 3rd Sentai and was based at Bota Airfield in Indonesia. It fought the Americans numerable times in the skies of the South Pacific. The plane crash-landed on the island of Biak, where it remained for 50 years, a victim to the jungle and the South Sea elements.
There was a lot of damage that was done after the airplane had crashed. 50 years of sitting out in the jungle, the corrosion that happens. 70% of the actual airframe was here, and of that, a very small percent that you're actually able to use. Most of the aluminum structure, especially in the wing, had to be built from scratch. And a lot of the stuff was just used by reverse engineering. You take the part apart and see how they designed it and what it was made out of, and then you build a new part, put it back together again.
This re-engineering process was slow and painstaking, and at this rate would add years to the project. What they needed were the original plans and data, the blueprints for the Zero.
It was a much more difficult problem with this airplane because all the data had been ordered destroyed after the Second World War. We spent years and years and years and leaned on countless relationships trying to find any source of drawings. And miraculously, through the help of Mitsubishi and the Japanese government, we were able to come up with the bulk of the drawings, which had, up until that point, pretty much been thought to be non-existent.
A set of blueprints for the Zero was saved for posterity by the Japanese that worked on it and realized the importance of saving the documents. That was their national symbol of pride, of cutting-edge technology. And to the Japanese, it's very important. And it's important to our country to remember what somebody else could build to do to us.
Alan and his team had finally located the technical drawings, and just when they thought they had leapt the final hurdle, they encountered yet another setback.
When we got over our first bout of elation, as always, we discovered there was a small problem. And that problem was that the plans were written in something called technical Japanese. And there simply didn't seem to be any people who could read technical Japanese. So we had to find some people, as you might imagine, much older Japanese citizens, who had been familiar with that technical language and were still able to read it, remember it, and were willing to translate it to Japanese.
Breaking this code was the single biggest key to finishing the project. Now, after 5 years of struggle, by utilizing this new set of blueprints, Alan and his team were able to construct a 100% authentic Zero, one that even its Japanese designers would be proud of.
The construction of this airplane was simple in design, but very complex, and that made the restoration very, very, very difficult. There were some huge number, 5,800 sub-assemblies of parts, so countless parts.
The restoration and reconstruction phase of the Zero is complete, but their dream is to see it fly, and it will. But first, the plane must go through its final phase of pre-flight checks and testing, and soon, when it's put back together, Alan will take it up for its first flight in more than 50 years.
It's a treasure that took a lot of work from a lot of different people over a period of 5 decades, going back to when the Japanese built and flew the airplane to the people that restored and are going to fly the airplane. It's treasure that you could hear, look at, touch, and I think that's very important. It's three-dimensional treasure.
It's like finding a Picasso that didn't exist as far as anybody knew because of the rarity of the airplane and of the history that it represents. It's, one of the rarest of the rare finds.
This once feared aircraft is now the crown jewel in Alan's collection of World War II warbirds. and worth in excess of $3 million. It is simply the finest example of a Zero known to exist anywhere in the world. And after 50 years lost in the jungle, this proud bird will soon take to the sky, back where it belongs.
All airplanes are good, but fighters are like wonderful magical carpets.
If one man's trash is another man's treasure, then flea markets and swap meets are treasure troves waiting to be explored. Who knows what rare and expensive items are hidden in these stalls? Fine art, rare books, memorabilia, collectibles. But could you imagine buying one of the most famous golden statues in the world for a few bucks? A statue that could be worth nearly $500,000? Oscar. The sleek golden statuette is filmdom's most coveted treasure. A rare treasure that only a chosen few have ever taken home. But even rarer is a special juvenile Oscar given out to but a choice few of the world's most popular performers. The child actors of Hollywood's golden era. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, stars like Shirley Temple and Judy Garland received their own miniature juvenile Oscar statuettes as recognition for their unique and endearing talents.
The juveniles are very unusual because only a dozen of them were ever given, and we haven't given one since 1960. Even the large Oscars are extremely rare, but we have given out something just over 2,200 of those since we began in 1929 with the first ceremonies.
In 1944, a 7-year-old actress named Margaret O'Brien joined that elite crowd. But by 1958, her Oscar was gone, stolen, and missing, surely forever. In the 1940s, Margaret O'Brien was the biggest little thing in movies. She was America's favorite sweetheart, and she was everywhere. She was the first star to have her own product lines and endorsements. The film Margaret is most famous for, the one that earned her an Oscar and secured her a special place in history, is Meet Me in St. Louis. When it opened in November of 1943, it ushered in the golden age of MGM musicals. Shot in Technicolor by Vincent Minnelli and starring as sisters, a young Judy Garland and an even younger Margaret O'Brien as the precocious Tootie. The film was a huge hit. Judy Garland often cited it as her favorite. But the scene stealer was little Margaret O'Brien, whose singing, dancing, and river of tears won the audience's heart.
Oh, I love doing Tootie because really that whole film we were like one big family. And I think that's what made that film such a great musical that has lasted, so many years and will last, I think, generations to come. My mother told me we were going to the Academy and I was to mind my manners and be good and sit properly and everything.
The best young actress of the whole year of 1944. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really don't know what to say. Thank you very much.
Margaret only had possession of her precious Oscar for 14 years. In 1958, the family housekeeper stole it from their home.
She was going to polish it, and I guess she hadn't polished it yet. She took it home, among a couple of other awards that were missing. And I didn't even know she had those. And then I tried calling, but her phone was disconnected. And I thought she just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Life went on for Margaret O'Brien, but she never forgot the Oscar she loved so much.
I kept looking, at a few antique shows and swap meets and different things, but I never came across it. So I was really giving up. Say 2 years ago, I just gave up. I just never thought I'd ever see it again.
And she didn't for almost 40 years until two treasure hunters discovered it at a swap meet.
First time I saw it was out at the Rose Bowl, which is a different swap meet. This is Pasadena City College, which is the second Sunday of the month. The Rose Bowl swap meet out in the parking lot at the Rose Bowl is the first Sunday of the month. I saw it out there about 2 years before, and the first time I saw it, this guy had it, a dealer had it, and he was arguing with a customer saying, buy it, it's real, I only want $100 for it. It seemed like a good deal, but I didn't know what I'd do with it, so I kind of, well, yeah, that's interesting. Mark and I kind of looking out for baseball stuff, not Academy Awards, although it gets your attention anyway. So I put it down, I didn't buy it, and I walked away. And then for a couple of years, I always used to think, I should have bought that. that was like a major mistake not to buy that. And then one day we're out here, it was in December '94, and we're walking around, or I'm walking around, Mark's walking around somewhere else, and I look up, and down at the end of the row, I see what looks to be like another one of these little Oscars, and I no, it can't be. So I like locked in on that thing like a heat-seeking missile, and I got right there, and sure enough, it's the same one, and I can't believe it. There's like no way that this thing has floated around swap meets for 2 years without somebody buying it, but it was the same one, and it's the Oscar and these other two awards that had been presented to her.
We both looked at it and made the lady an offer, and she took it.
A photographer friend of Mark and Steve's suggested that they could sign the Oscar to an auction house specializing in Hollywood memorabilia. He had heard that Oscars in the past had fetched as much as $10,000, sometimes more, depending on who won them.
The most expensive one we've heard about was $500,000 for one associated with Gone with the Wind. That's a staggering amount of money.
Within the week, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences heard about the Oscar on the auction block and quickly contacted Margaret O'Brien's friend, famous Hollywood casting director Marvin Page.
I knew him and I didn't really know Miss O'Brien, and just asked him to check and see if there was some possibility that she had actually lost the statuette. And he was skeptical, but he called back and said, well, there was one that was lost some time ago. Is it possible that it's this one? And of course we didn't know, and so we made an appointment, and sure enough, we had the right one.
I just couldn't believe when they said that they had found it after all these years.
So I said to John, well, give them back to her. That's fine. If she lost them through some sort of misfortune, they really belonged to her. They were meant to be with her, and she should have them. We only had one request, and that was, we said, can we just get a picture of us handing the Academy Award to Margaret, just so we can tell everybody we once presented an Academy Award. And they said, sure, no problem. And little did we know what we were getting into.
It seemed only right to make a little splash about it.
The look in her eyes was kind of like my daughters when they get that special birthday present or Christmas present.
It's like receiving it all over again. I had such a wonderful time making that movie.
The sense in which the Oscar is a treasure is really, it comes from an acknowledgement that at one point, one moment in your life, at least one, you were doing whatever you do, the craft you perform, at the absolute pinnacle that it can be done.
When you go to her house, there's pictures of her with General MacArthur and presidents, and with Bob Hope getting this Academy Award, and you think that here's a woman who was a child, was a star, knew all the great stars of Hollywood, and you think of the life she must have had, and what it must take to thrill somebody like that.
And I just want to say to everybody that's ever lost anything near and dear to them, to never give up hope. I didn't, and it's finally come home to me. Thank you.
Margaret O'Brien's Oscar is now back where it belongs, nestled safely at home, her most precious possession.
It was the gay 90s, and there was no more freewheeling spirit than in Los Angeles. All kinds of people flocked to the bustling frontier town, and some even called the City of Angels the City of Fallen Angels. Today, Los Angeles faces another turn of the century. And while it makes way for the future, it's discovering some unexpected treasures of the past. As the Metropolitan Water District prepares to construct an office building on what was once a parking lot near Union Station, a state law requires that archaeologists first investigate the area to determine the environmental impact. Dr. Julia Costello, co-director of the excavation, is a treasure hunter. But she's not seeking the gold and other valuables you might expect.
Medicinal bottles, ceramics, jars, probably a Florida water.
She's uncovered an unknown, and some may say shocking, story of Los Angeles. It's buried treasure, but of a different sort.
All artifacts are rubbish from the past, whether they're 4,000 years old or 100 years old. What people throw out is what archaeologists excavate and treasure and agonize over, and that's the stories of the past. And as we uncover that historic ground surface, what appears are the outlines of privies that were in the backyard of these houses that faced Aliso Street. The privies are the outhouses. These are the pre-plumbing facilities in the backyards. It is only when the privy is abandoned, plumbing is put into the house, and it becomes an empty hole in the backyard for trash.
When archaeologists dig into the past, it's never certain what they'll find.
Hagen's Magnolia Bomb. So we were expecting kind of a blue-collar working neighborhood, and we would get refuse that would reflect that. And in our first set of privies, we started coming up with the goblets and the etched glass and the expensive porcelains, and going, wait a minute, this isn't a blue-collar neighborhood, this is expensive table settings. And then our historians went back to work and realized we weren't in a little residential neighborhood. At that time period, we were in a red light district, and we were in very fancy parlor houses where the men were being entertained in a fashion way beyond that neighborhood. Actually, we coined a phrase out there, the Johns for the Johns, which we thought described it.
Once excavated, the bounty will be taken to the Anthro Study Center, where it will be cleaned, cataloged, and analyzed. Julia Costello travels regularly to Sonoma State University, just north of San Francisco, where the meticulous work is taking place. She and co-director Dr. Adrian Pretzelis meet to review their treasures. With more than 50,000 pieces to be examined, their work will continue over the next year or two.
This is what you've heard about from the field crew, and I know everyone's told you, but now you're going to get a chance to see it for the first time.
I'm looking forward to it. What is it? Wow. Whoa. Boy, a little gold character here.
We did take it to a jeweler yesterday, though, and it's 22 karat.
This is so unusual. We very rarely find precious metals like this kind of thing.
While the gold is beautiful, it is the everyday items that are the most intriguing.
I always like finding the toothpaste jar lids. In the 19th century, most people didn't actually brush their teeth too much. Isn't it a shocking thought, isn't it?
It's a shocking thought.
Yeah, and in fact, hotels and public places often had common toothbrushes where people could just sort of use the toothbrush that was sitting there by the washstand. It's a pretty gross concept.
Yeah. Some of the other things they laid out here that are so lovely.
Julie and Adrian begin to put together the pieces of LA's past.
Fine.
Lovely.
It's really lovely.
Yeah, it is.
Little pressed glass candy dishes, what are common. Yeah, go
okay, right.
Where the ordinary person might see only bits of glass and pottery, archaeologists can conjure up a vision of crystal decanters, fine china dishes, and a whole way of life.
They were setting the table with all of these exotic things from different parts of the world. German porcelains, hand-painted globes from Europe, bitters bottles, wine bottles from France. If we're recreating little scenes here, we have pipe smoking, wine drinking, whiskey drinking, and a platter of something brought out from the main house. Sure. But this is a very cosmopolitan crowd.
Each broken piece helps tell the story of a business where women worked hard to entertain their customers in lavish style. Perhaps this pitcher was used to fill their glasses during lively dinners. Possibly this dish decorated the parlor where they relaxed after work.
Just sit here for a second.
And in the wee hours of the morning, it might have been this face cream that the ladies of the evening used as they prepared to retire.
These are broken artifacts. If you took them to the flea market, you wouldn't get a penny for them if you tried to sell them. But as items that represent the nation's past, they are treasures. They're invaluable.
During the district's heyday, hundreds of young women came from San Francisco and other parts of the country to these brothels, euphemistically labeled female boarding.
The story of prostitution, of course, is complicated. At this time in the late 19th century, there were very few job opportunities for women at all. They could be a school teacher and they could do some nursing, but otherwise their options were very limited. So in some ways, prostitution was the only option that many of them had, and they were fallen women and called women of ill fame, but often they were taking the only route that they could to live independently. If not condoned, at least it was seen as a necessary part of society. And oftentimes they thought the presence of a red light district diffused males who might otherwise go out and get into trouble. They actually published a sporting guide in 1897 in which the women advertised and gave descriptions of the attributes of their house and the names of the women and the reasons why you would have a better time there than somewhere else. And it was passed out to the newcomers that came to town to get them to frequent the neighborhood and try out their wares.
But the elegant lifestyle couldn't cover up the district's seamy underside, where a woman was more often considered a piece of merchandise.
The crib district in Los Angeles was quite famous. They were a series of 10, 20, 40 little rooms all in a row with a door, window. The women would sit in the windows and the men would walk by and they would chat with them and entice them in, and they would go in and do business and be back on the street again.
For most women in that profession, their bid for independence came with a heavy price.
There's a very dark side, of course, to the prostitution. They're hanging out in a part of town and with colleagues who are in illegal business ventures of all kinds, and so there's lots of alcohol, drug abuse.
There's a lot of medical artifacts, lots and lots of drugs. Interestingly enough, we're looking at both the public facade of the place, which has a really fancy parlor, but at the back of that, there are people who are very concerned about their health. Maybe they have medical problems. I would imagine that there was probably a fair amount of disease in this particular institution.
In 1909, a reform movement wiped out the cribs and cleared out the bordellos. Of course, that way of life didn't really disappear. It just went underground. So too did the only evidence of that wild time. 30 feet underground to be precise, as the privies were covered with landfill in order to build the Union Station parking lot. Sealed in the earth, these pieces of the past lay waiting to tell a story of a time gone by.
If you look at this kind of stuff, this tells us about how modern society was created, how we became what we are today. And it's on the basis of our own perceptions of how the world used to be, is how we create it today.
Because we don't have written documents on this oldest of industries that was going on in Los Angeles, and we don't have many first-hand accounts of the day, then if we're going to fill in that piece of the past, we need to rely on the treasures from underground. But you never know when you scrape back the earth what's going to appear out of there, what new story, what different twist. It's rather like being on a big treasure hunt and finding these gems and jewels under every rock.
We'll be right back with the hunt for amazing treasure.
Treasure ships usually yield gold, silver, and jewels. But the Jan Chirping, a small Swedish ketch sunk by a German sub during World War I, was carrying an entirely different treasure. One that we think might really surprise you. The First World War was raging across the European continent. Although Sweden was neutral, there was a heavy trade of goods being smuggled across the Baltic to Finland, eventually destined for Russia. There was so much smuggling going on, the Germans kept a small fleet stationed in the Baltic for the express purpose of stopping the illicit trade. In October 1917, a small Swedish ketch, the Jan Chirping, slipped out of its home port in northern Sweden, headed for Rauma in Finland. In addition to the steel products she was carrying, there was also a very secret and unusual cargo. The Jönköping was smuggling champagne and cognac for the officers of the Imperial Russian Army.
There were supposedly 70 barrels of cognac. There were 50 packing cases, each containing 100 bottles of champagne, and 30 casks of Bordeaux wine on the manifest. And they had been sent from France to Sweden, and then they were being smuggled across the Baltic to the Russian army.
A German U-boat intercepted the Jönköping, removed her crew, and sank her with explosive charges. The ship and her cargo went to the bottom. And then, almost 80 years later, Claes Bergvall, a Swedish treasure hunter, decided to go after her.
The amount of cognac was 68 barrels, loaded with 5,000 gallons of cognac in different quality, from the absolute best down to, the scrap cognac.
You might have got 25,000 bottles out of that ship. 25,000 bottles of cognac, which had been at the bottom of the sea for such a long time, would be a fantastic find.
Niklas Löfqvist is a Swedish journalist who covered the story.
When they tried to find out what they could do to get a ship up and what they could do with the champagne if it was drinkable or the cognac, they went to the Vasa Museum and talked to the experts.
The Vasa, a 16th century Swedish ship of war which sank in Stockholm harbor, was brought to the surface 300 years later, demonstrating that wood can survive centuries of immersion in the Baltic. So there was every possibility the casks containing the cognac would be found intact. Claes Bergvall knew this was a treasure worth going after. The cognac in those barrels could be worth millions, perhaps tens of millions. While there was no evidence it was still drinkable after 80 plus years on the bottom, the Jönköping's cargo was what dreams are made of.
The experts told them that champagne 80 years old could never drink that, forget it.
Yes, but it was the barrels of cognac that were the real treasure Bergvall was after.
There was a very big chance that they should have survived the storage at the bottom of the sea.
Bergvall and his partners knew that unlike most salvage operations, they would spend little time locating the ship. Bergvall had the U-boat captain's meticulously kept log, with coordinates showing where the Jönköping had been scuttled. The hard part was to be the recovery itself, because when they located the ship, she was not at the depth they expected. Instead of a very reachable 125 feet, the ship actually lay at a depth of almost 200 feet, and this changed everything.
So they had to go back to Sweden and find some people who could do this kind of diving, trimix diving. Then you need 3 different kinds of gases to be able to work at that depth.
They found a diving team that specialized in the use of trimix, a special blend of gases that enables divers working at great depths to return to the surface without suffering from the bends.
They had to rush from the diving elevator that took them up, get off all the clothes, rush into the compression chamber, right? Then they had to spend 6 hours in the compression chamber.
Slow down.
The work was slow and dangerous. The water temperature was freezing and there was little, if any, visibility. Only 15 minutes at a time could actually be spent at the sea bottom for exploration.
Everything okay? Okay.
So divers worked around the clock in an attempt to speed things up. Despite their best efforts, the salvers soon found themselves at a point where they believed they might not be able to get the job done.
We knew that the cost was going to be much higher because of the extra 75 feet of depth where we found the Jönköping. But suddenly it started to raise by 50% every time we went out, or sometimes even with 100%.
It was time for a new game plan. If the ship was too deep for the divers to get to, then bring the ship closer to the divers.
1 meter below the surface. This area has to be free so we can
go underneath, so we are losing time now.
They would tunnel under the hull and slip cables around her. Then a crane would be brought in to raise her off the bottom, bringing the Jönköping close to the surface where it would be easy for the divers to salvage her. When everything was ready, a giant floating crane was brought to the site in heavy seas and slowly maneuvered into position. Almost 100 feet high, the crane had never before been used in the open sea. If the weather suddenly changed while holding the full weight of the Jönköping, there was every chance she could capsize. And then, finally, the treasure for which they had set out was nearly at hand. The first barrels were raised from the wreck.
We started to see if we could get any of the barrels loose, and we brought something like 31 barrels up on deck. All of them were cognac barrels. We noticed that few of these barrels were leaking heavily, and some of them were more intact. But I mean, we realized that the barrels were not in a very, very good condition.
The atmosphere on board darkened as the damage to the cask became evident.
They found that unfortunately the water had got through the wood and had effectively changed places with the cognac inside, and so the contents of all the barrels was completely spoiled.
After all the work, Berval found his hopes dashed. But they decided to carefully preserve the cognac in large plastic containers on the hope it could still be saved. Fearing a change in the weather, Berval didn't want to keep the wreck tied to the crane any longer than necessary. Divers were sent down for one last look before cutting her loose. And that's when they saw it. An open wooden box hidden behind some debris with bottles inside.
And they thought, well, you know, it's been down there 80 years, could never be intact. And then someone saw that there was some air in the bottle. And they realized, okay, if there's air in the bottle, that means there can't be salt water in the bottle. So they opened it up and tried the first champagne, and it was delicious.
We decided to taste it, and it was absolutely the experience of my life. You know, it was absolutely fantastic.
What the experts had told them was entirely wrong. The cognac, which was supposed to be perfect, was not, and the undrinkable champagne was excellent.
The extraordinary thing with this champagne was that it just hadn't changed. And the thing that matures wine more than anything is heat. And at 64 meters, it's 2 to 4 degrees centigrade all the year round.
This meant for perfect conditions for the champagne, because it was like having a wine cellar at the bottom of the Baltics.
While the giant crane continued to hold the Jönköping in place, the divers started bringing up the bottles. But even this was not to be without problems.
The problem was that as they brought the bottles up, the corks naturally would start to rise because the wires that hold the corks in at the top of the champagne had corroded away, they'd rusted and gone. Second, that the pressure at 64 meters in any ocean is almost exactly identical to the pressure inside a bottle of champagne, which is why you have a wire on the cork to stop it flying out. But the corks were exposed now.
And as the bottles rose, the water pressure holding the corks in place lessened, which is why the corks were loosening.
And they had this rather ingenious method that they put a wire mesh over the top of the cork with a tight wire around it to hold the cork in. Now, they had to act very fast because as these bottles were coming up in a basket, maybe at 6 or 8 at a time, they had to be pretty fleet of hand to get this wire over the top of the cork, put a tough wire around to hold it on, and so secure the wine in the bottle.
The method succeeded. In just a couple of days, they managed to retrieve over 2,000 bottles of the champagne. When the divers could find no more bottles, Berval decided to bring the Jönköping to the surface. The sea was calm, and everyone wanted to see this small boat, the recovery of which had proved to be so difficult. The crane slowly winched the Jönköping to the surface and held her there. Divers carefully checked the ketch from bow to stern, making sure they had retrieved everything salvageable. Claes Berval had hoped they could tow the Jönköping back into harbor and preserve the little ship. But again, Baltic weather interfered, and they cut her loose before the weather could put the crane in jeopardy.
So we cut one of the wires and Jönköping disappeared. Which was even a bigger disappointment for me than the knowledge of the cognac not being very good. So that was traumatic experience for me to see Jönköping disappear into the depths of the Baltic once more.
So in the end, the big payoff turned out to be the champagne. It went to auction at Christie's in London, just before the millennium. A tasting was held prior to the auction, and the wine world was able to sample this perfectly preserved champagne for the very first time.
It was bright in color. It didn't smell as though anything had happened to it. It was really considerably sweet. It filled the mouth and remained after you had swallowed it.
All done at 2,000, 2,000 again, £2,000 for this
The
bottle.
1907 Piper Heidsieck sold for prices ranging from $2,500 to $4,000 a bottle. But while there were many buyers eager to have the champagne for millennium celebrations, there aren't as many who are now willing to pay those prices. So Berval and his partners keep the remaining bottles in a cold storage warehouse where the champagne continues to age, waiting for buyers who can afford it, at about $100 a sip. And the original French distiller that manufactured the cognac has now designed a process which can extract the seawater, so there are hopes it can be made drinkable and, of course, saleable. 3 years before, when Berval and his partners embarked on this recovery, they couldn't have foreseen the difficulties. The deep water diving, a stormy and unpredictable sea, raising the ship off the bottom, and in the end, a treasure entirely different from the one they went after. But Klaus knows adversity is what treasure hunting is all about.
And that's the main incentive in doing this sort of work is when you decide to go for something, then you go for it all the way. There's no midway leave or something like that. You have to do it from the beginning to the bitter end. There's no other way you can do it.
Talk about finding treasure in your own backyard. Well, this is a story about someone who's actually done it. Jamie Hill has lived here in the tiny village of Hiddenite, North Carolina for almost his entire life. And for most of that time, he's been digging up the ground, looking for one particular thing. Running beneath the town is what is thought to be one of the most complex geological zones in the world. 63 different kinds of gemstones have been found in the immediate area. But the one that has always interested Jamie Hill is the emerald.
Jamie Hill spent years searching the countryside, driving backcountry trails, looking for the telltale signs that would lead him to the elusive emeralds. Hill has been hunting for treasure since the age of 10, when he found gold coins from the Revolutionary War. Convinced the geology of his hometown was prime territory for emeralds, he quit college to look for them, and has been single-mindedly searching for the last 15 years. He believed the town was sitting on top of the type of geology which is perfect territory for emeralds, an ancient pre-Cambrian fault. Jamie Hill couldn't see it, but he knew it was there. He had to borrow to keep going, and soon found himself over $100,000 in debt. Finally, he found a site and convinced his family to buy 100 acres of wooded land he was certain sat directly above the fault. His first explorations were on the surface, using just a simple screwdriver and shovel. Then, while doing one of many exploratory digs, he found a vein of mica and quartz, two minerals that when found together are a sign emeralds might be close by. The vein dipped into hard rock, where Hill uncovered a pocket, a 2-foot wide open space that was filled with mud, mica, and emeralds.
Oh my God. Good Lord, there's a hog. There's a hog.
Jamie Hill had finally found the treasure he was looking for, an entire cache of it. When he found the emerald pocket, he was weeks away from having his equipment repossessed. His water had been cut off, and he was about to lose his house. Today, Hill has been able to expand his exploratory hole in the ground to this, a full-scale emerald mine. So we came to Hiddenite to see if we could find emeralds with Jamie Hill.
Now, is there an emerald in here?
Yes, this piece here.
This is it right here.
That's the emerald right there.
Wow.
That's approximately 10 carats.
And when did you find this? Recently?
Day before yesterday. Day before yesterday.
All
So
right.
we're hot on the trail to another pocket. Hot on the trail.
Well, let's hope today's the day, huh?
Yep.
Several days before we arrived, Hill had found one of the telltale pockets that can signal the presence of emeralds. He ordered in a special endoscopic camera to examine the inside of the pocket to see if it contained any of the clues that would indicate this is a place to dig. Pockets like this one give Hill a chance to peek underground and see if a vein looks promising. This one certainly did, and that rock-encrusted emerald was the result. So we're back today to dig deeper and find some more pockets.
How much does this sucker weigh?
93,000 pounds. The boom alone is 40,000.
Incredible.
As heavy and unwieldy as the backhoe is, the operator must have a light touch. The trick is to get as close to a pocket as possible with the heavy equipment without actually disturbing the very fragile emeralds. One mistake here could cost millions in lost gems. So, it is with some trepidation I take over the controls. After a few minutes of instruction, it's my turn on the big cat. Slowly, by hammering and scraping the rock, we continue to open the vein until we find another telltale sign which can announce the presence of emeralds.
Now, you were telling me something earlier about when you know you're getting close to emeralds, you start to see like some yellow.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Can you show me that?
The yellow limonite, which is encasing the whole vein structure here
Right.
with the quartz and all of these micas,
Right.
is it's a pure limonite clay, and we kind of term this a yellow brick road. When you're following this material here with the quartz and
yeah.
the mica, that is a pure pocket clay that forms in the caverns where the emeralds grow, and it seeps up through the vein structure itself, through the quartz and the mica. And so essentially when your hands are turning this color yellow, you're on the right trail to find emerald.
Like you said, the yellow brick road to the Emerald
Leads
City.
to the real Emerald City.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is where you found in this pocket some emerald?
I've got an emerald I want to show you here. It's 858 carats.
Unbelievable. Wow, can I see it?
Yes.
Oh, it's huge. And how many carats is this?
858.
That's amazing.
Emeralds are extremely rare, 19 times rarer than diamonds. This emerald, the Jolly Green Giant, was purchased for $500,000, and once a high-quality emerald has been cut, its value increases dramatically. These two emeralds were cut from rough stones found right here in Jamie Hill's mine. The Carolina Princess sold for $500,000. That's $64,000 per carat, the highest price ever paid for an emerald. The Carolina Queen, with an estimated value of at least $1.5 million, translates into over $100,000 per carat. Hill's favorite tool is a screwdriver, and while I think this is an odd choice for finding emeralds, I soon learn it is exactly what you need to nurse one out of its hiding place.
Periodically through there. What you do is you just put your screwdriver in and just see the soft clay like that.
Right.
And we're just going to pull it out. See the mica forming in it?
Right, okay.
It's real soft in there. That's a good sign.
Don't be too far.
Okay.
So I can go in here too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alright.
See the seam's going up under here.
Yeah, it is.
There's a pocket here. It just doesn't look like one because it's filled with mud and clay. But that doesn't mean there aren't emeralds nearby.
How's it doing back
It's
in there?
going right behind this rock.
Okay.
Yep.
Dale, we're probably going to have you hit this again.
Not quite there yet. We have to hit it again with the hammer. As the day wears on, I begin to understand the level of patience this work demands. A lot of starting and stopping. Explosives can't be used to break through the hard rock because it would fragment the very fragile emeralds. At this point, even using the pneumatic hammer is taking a chance.
Want to go check it out?
Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Where's the hand trowel? Okay.
It bust that wide open, didn't it?
Yeah, he did. He broke it pretty good. It's good. See how soft it got down there?
Yeah.
Look at that.
This is
Oh, look at all that big mica, see that?
Your heart skips a beat when you see this green mica.
I know.
Like the sun catches it.
It
You think,
tends to fool
well,
you some, but
could that be it?
well, you have to check every piece.
Yeah.
We slowly and methodically work our way through the pocket. I have no idea if we're close to finding anything. Then Jamie sees something.
Ooh, that's good looking material there. See that?
Yeah.
Look, ooh.
I see it now too. A spot of creamy green stone. Emerald green.
Yes, sir. So that's it right
Yeah,
there.
that's the emerald right there. See, it's real dirty because it's coated in the clay. It's emerald.
The emerald is covered with mud and dirt. I would have totally missed it, but Jamie's experienced eye picked it right out.
Yeah, that's
Give me
it.
5. Nice work.
That's it. We've got emerald. Took a lot of hard work. We've got a cluster. It looks like that's well over 100 carats of emerald in there. And we're going to have to be real careful.
Yeah,
Just take it out. And see, that's emerald too. It's all in there. That's emerald.
This whole section.
That's a whole section of emerald. See it growing?
Yep.
There's a stick that way. There's a whole stick that way. Good color too.
Okay, let's get it.
The trick is to get the emerald out with as little fragmentation as possible.
You want to put your hand under?
Jamie works his way around it, loosening the rock and mica while trying not to disturb the emerald.
You don't want to break that one.
It'll come out. It's already going to be a section, but the better part's up here. Okay. All right. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty. Yeah, we got it.
Right.
We got emerald. That's it.
Good deal.
There you go. That's good color. Good green.
Pure raw emerald.
Today's find will cut into small stones ranging from 1/2 to 1 carat in size, with a value in the area of $10,000, contributing to a running total of well over $1 million in emeralds found here so far. So Jamie Hill has found his own field of dreams, and he literally has just touched the surface.
Relatively speaking, we're only from the surface of the ground, what, 12, 15 feet?
12, 15 feet, yeah.
12, 15 feet. Well, in other parts of the world, they have to go under whole mountain ranges, thousands of feet deep, you see, to get emerald.
Right.
We're only 15 feet deep, and we're getting them.
You're just getting started.
Exactly. And today, we pulled out approximately 100 carats of emerald, some of which is good and cuttable, and some it's not.
Right.
But it's still emerald, and it's good color, and we're only 15 feet deep. So we're just beginning here.
All right.
And I got my life's work cut out right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You need another backhoe driver, let me know.
Okay.
All right. Have fun.
Thanks.
Beneath the tranquil surface of this freshwater spring in North Florida is as amazing a world as you're ever likely to see. On the surface, visitors swim and enjoy the glass-bottom boat tour. And below, in water so clear the visibility seems endless, divers are mapping and exploring what is believed to be one of the world's longest and deepest underwater cave systems. This is Wakulla Springs, and it is part of an enormous underground limestone formation which contributes billions of gallons to the supply of fresh water that Florida uses daily. Ponce de Leon is said to have discovered this spring, which some believe might even be his legendary Fountain of Youth. In more recent times, the natural beauty of Wakulla, its clear water, and the jungle-like setting has captured the attention of visitors since it was used in the early 1930s as a location for the first Tarzan movies. And along about the time Johnny Weissmuller was swinging on vines, the first primitive attempts were being made to discover the source of the spring's enormous volume of fresh water. And it was then that divers discovered a treasure trove no one was really looking for. Along the smooth bottom, lying on the sand, was a multitude of bones. Some were clearly the remains of prehistoric creatures long extinct. Scientists puzzled over what they were and how they got there.
Probably at the time that they were at Wakulla, the water table was down much lower. It was probably not a spring. It was probably a deep sinkhole, and animals, they would just congregate there, and I suspect some of them just sort of fell in accidentally.
Modern paleontologists, diving deeper into prehistoric times, point out that the mastodon skeletons found at Wakulla, now mounted in museums, and the mastodon bones and teeth still to be seen here, prove that this great spring has been welling forth for 25,000 years. New finds are still being made.
One group of bones turned out to be the neatness one sees here at Wakula.
And you can see from the skeleton, which was recovered in the 1930s, this was a huge animal. Stood 16 feet high at the head.
A mastodon fossil like this one might bring $1 million in today's market. And as these divers push deeper into the enormous cave system, they are discovering that Wakula has many more treasures buried in the sand.
One of the most interesting things is in the limestone matrix are frozen all kinds of relics of time. You've got complete skeletons of creatures that no longer exist. These are all well preserved, and then you find more recent type of bones that are actually in bone form that may be 10, 20,000 years old that are laying on the floor.
Although the spring clearly contains many more prehistoric fossils, the divers must leave them for the time being. Underwater paleontology is an expensive undertaking, and the mission here is to study the flow of water through the cave system.
And the recent 2 projects to map Wakulla Springs have resulted in the finding of additional bone beds. These have not been observed by a paleontologist or an archaeologist, so it's unclear what might be down there. In late Pleistocene fauna in Florida are mammoth and mastodon and horse and saber cat.
So the scientists are happy to let the prehistoric fossil bones lay undisturbed, just asking the divers to map and photograph locations for future research and recovery. In the meantime, the treasure of Wakula is considered safe. Having survived down here for many thousands of years, it's a good bet it'll be here a little while longer.